Well, new nightly polling done by Nanos for CTV News and CP24 shows that the Ontario Liberals continue to gain ground on the Conservatives.
According to these latest numbers, the PCs have the support of almost 44% of voters, a 13-point lead over the Liberals. Support for the Liberals, though, by the way, jumped 2.5 points to 30.9%. New Democrats dropping a point to 18.8%. The Greens are sitting at 4%. So let's take a closer look at these numbers now with Nik Nanos this morning. Nick, do you see this as momentum for the Liberals, or is 2.5 point gain? I mean, there's been a bit of a creep. How do you describe it?
Well, I think if you're a Liberal, you're probably really happy with those numbers. But I think it's a little too early to say whether it's momentum. You know, in the nightly tracking that we do with CP24 and CTV News, you know, at the beginning, the Conservatives had a 16-point advantage. Now it's a 13-point advantage. We'll see whether that continues. You know, some of the key races, you know, in Toronto, it's still a neck-and-neck race between the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals. Even in the GTA, you know, the margin between the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals is now only 10 percentage points. Those are two kind of big swaths of seats for both parties that are actually critical for the performance for all of the major parties right there. So we are seeing a little bit of a tightening. You know, whether this continues, wait and see. We'll see how both Ford, Crombie, and Stiles do in the next couple days to see if they can shake what I'll say the Conservative advantage. But right now, still at 13 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, everything is so kind of dependent on what U.S. President Donald Trump does with this moving goalpost, and that influences what people here are focused on. But there seems to be a sentiment that, you know, the talk about health care, ODSP, Bonnie Crombie made a pretty good speech last week to media saying how she'll double ODSP and really focused on health care. Do you think that can be attributed to, you know, the slight rise we're seeing in her numbers?
I think so. And, you know, the thing is that in research that we just released yesterday with CP24 and CTV News suggests that only 14% of Canadians, of Ontarians, that is, thought that the Trump tariff stuff was how they were going to decide how they're going to vote in the upcoming Ontario election. People said they're more likely to vote on healthcare and jobs. What does that mean? That means for the opposition parties, talking about healthcare and jobs is good because Ontarians will tune into that. That also means for Doug Ford, the leader of the Progressive Conservatives, yeah, he's got to talk about Trump because obviously there are Ontarians that's going to be the key decision point. But he's got to talk about healthcare. He's got to talk about jobs, probably within the context of the U.S. relationship. But he's going to have to diversify his message. And I don't think this election is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump right now, based on what Ontarians are telling us.
It's interesting. I'll be intrigued to follow the tracking on that sort of ballot question, Nick, because, of course, you know, then today we find out 25% tariffs on steel. Then on Wednesday, the premiers go down to Washington. So they'll be able to kind of focus that, or certainly Doug Ford will definitely be able to reaffirm that message here. How quickly, though, my bigger question is when you see, you know, the shifting sands a little bit, you know, the numbers like a 13, 16 down to 13. Have you ever seen numbers change like 10 points in 2 weeks? Because that's really where we're at, the gap that needs to be shrunk if the Liberals are going to potentially take over.
For the gap to kind of narrow, what would need to happen is someone would have to make a mistake, and that someone would be Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservatives. Right now, he has the advantage. It's his election to lose. If he made a mistake, if someone around him made a mistake, if something happened during the leaders' debate that kind of allowed people or provoked people to rethink how they might vote, and that could be in favor of Ford or against Ford, those would be massive game changers right now.
Yeah, and in terms of preferred premier, Doug Ford still in the lead with 39.3% over Bonnie Crombie at 25.6%. So we'll have to square that one as well with all of the other data. Nik Nanos, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll chat with you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.